Today, we're going to discuss the effects of violent content. The work on the effects of violent content on individuals can be broken into three different types of effects. The first is the aggressor effect, wherein the individual becomes more aggressive after being exposed to violent content, either through their cognitions, which might be more violent, or their actual behaviors, which might be more aggressive or violent. The second type of effect is the fear of victimization effect, wherein the individual becomes more afraid that something bad will happen to them because they think the world's a more dangerous place. So these sorts of people might watch more media, news media especially, and think that the world around them is really scary because there's a lot of crime. And as a result of that, they might not go outside as much, or they might alter their behaviors in ways because they worry that they're going to be attacked in some way. And finally, the third type of effect is desensitization, wherein the individual does not respond as powerfully to violence or gore. In other words, violence and gore just aren't quite as scary anymore for these individuals that have been desensitized. People like to argue whether or not there actually is an effect of violent content on aggressive behavior and cognitions. If you look at all the studies that have been published in this area, though, you'll see that there is a small but persistent effect. And the size of the effect of exposure to violent content on aggression is different for different people, as we will see. Let's talk about the aggressor effect in more detail. Research shows that males are more likely to be negatively influenced by violent content. So that's an example of how a dispositional variable makes certain people more susceptible to an effect. Children are also more susceptible because children often model their behavior based on what they see on television. For example, a research study examined how children played hockey after exposure to a violent cartoon. And children who watched that violent cartoon before playing were rated as more aggressive during the hockey game than children who watched an equally exciting but non-violent cartoon. Researchers have found similar effects for violent music videos. Violent lyrics in the music videos were related to increased aggressive thoughts and hostile feelings. So these are all examples of the aggressor effect, where exposure to some sort of violent content relates to people either thinking more aggressively or behaving more aggressively. Research also clearly demonstrates that heavy television viewers are more fearful about becoming victims of violence, and as a result, they're more distrustful of others, and they're more likely to see the world as a scary and hostile place. Why? Well, have you watched the news recently? Or what about a crime procedural? Quite a lot of television narratives and news feature violence or aggressive behaviors perpetrated by one person on another. So if you watch a lot of this type of content, you're more likely to see the world as a scary place and think that there's just more crime in the world. Finally, let's talk about the desensitization effect. Research indicates that people who watch a lot of violent media are less sympathetic to actual victims of violence, and they actually perceive people to be less injured. So if they watch people get punched, for example, they might say that that person wasn't hurt all that badly, even if they were. They also take longer to help people in need. Indeed, children who watched a violent cartoon took significantly longer to seek help when they witnessed an altercation in which children were actually getting hurt. And they took longer than those that watched a non-violent cartoon. So again, we can see how exposure to violent content desensitizes people to actual real-world violence. So overall, exposure to violent content either through television or music or video games influences individuals' aggressive thoughts and behaviors, their perceptions about being a victim, and their desensitization to violence. The overall effect size is small, but it depends on a number of factors, including individuals' gender, their age, and their beginning levels of aggression, the natural levels of aggression that differ among individuals.